If you want to learn how we completely wrap this entire post and turn it from this to this, we'll keep on watching. Let's get started.
In my last video, we wrapped this entire beam with a solid walnut wrap. However, this post obviously needs some work too, but I didn't want to wrap the post in the same thing that I did with the beam, so here comes our solution.
Now this is a Evolve stone, and I actually found them at the IBS trade show earlier this year. That does not stand for Irritable Bowel Syndrome, it stands for International Builder Show. And I could not believe what I saw because they were nailing this product in place on an exterior surface, and I had to take a look and see. Now this is an impenetrable product that you can physically nail interiorly or exteriorly, and as you can see, there's copious shapes and sizes to go with this system to make it look like a more natural stone surface. We're going to be wrapping our post with this product, so let's take a look at a few examples of what we can do. With this post that we're wrapping, there are a couple different options to choose from. Number one, we do a butt-to-butt joint where it makes it a lot easier to install and wrap along the column. However, we can also do a mitered joint all the way around, which takes a bit of time and energy to do, but a much more professional look and feel in the end, which is why we're gonna go with the harder one. So we have some cuts to take care of. Let's get to it.
Before we get to the actual cutting, I wanted to lay this product out just to see how this system completely commingles with all these other fit pieces. Now, all these pieces are already pre-cut to the exact shape and size needed to apply it to large swaths of area. And if you want to see this product featured in a more larger substantial area like an exterior wall, accent wall, or even fireplace, please let me know in the description box below because I am interested to see what you, the viewer, would like to see in a product application. As for the color and product used for this project, Evolve Stone calls us out as their Georgetown Run Kodiak Mine color, which I personally feel will complement the walnut beam wrap perfectly. We do have an exceptional amount of cuts to make because we are wrapping a post, and in order to speed up the manufacturing process of this product, I actually grabbed a couple pieces of scrap plywood and MDF and made a homemade table sled. In my circumstance, I know I'm going to be wrapping the entire post with OSB prior to installing the stone because I need a proper surface to nail to. And that surface is going to be 8 inches wide by 8 inches wide, and that is also dictating the sizes of every single piece that I'm cutting here. The smallest length that comes in this series is 5 inches long, but the longest length is actually 10 inches long, and all those 10s are actually going to be getting a mitered corner on both sides. And the interior dimension from miter corner to miter corner is approximately 8 1/4 inch, and that's because we want to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room since our box we're going to be building is 8 inches wide. As for the short and middle length stone, I place a mark on the table sled so I know for certain exactly where I need each piece to be cut. To length, that is, because I'm trying to get the most bang for our buck out of every single piece because I don't want to make any more than I have to on this project. And as you can see, because this product is a composite material, it cuts like butter. And it makes it extremely easy to cut all these pieces to length. Just be careful and mindful of all your digits while doing this project. Once you have all your pieces cut, it's time for gluing and nailing. And as you can see, there is quite a large variance between the sizes and the texture of each piece. But even with that, you can still get a very good seam. It's not going to be perfect, but with a little bit of wiggle room and some cutting that I'll be showing you later, you can get an extremely professional look with a very minimal seam that you don't really notice unless you're right up next to it. I first apply a thin layer of construction adhesive on the back miter corner edge and then use my pin nailer. Now this is a 23 gauge pin nailer, which is exactly the type of nailer that you want to use in this application because one, it still provides a large amount of hold strength even though these nails are so small, and two, you don't have to worry about blowing out these mitered corners with a more substantial nail, which could happen if you're using a 16 or 18 gauge nailer. On the smaller pieces, I generally use about 4 nails on each side, but on the larger, more substantial pieces like this one, I'm using at least 6 to 8 pin nails on each side. Once one of these pieces is built out completely, you're going to realize something. We have a mismatched edge. As you can see there, all the lighter pieces is the area where the table saw cut it. However, because this product has color all the way through the entire product, all I have to do is smooth down that seam in order to provide a more professional look, and then apply a small amount of clear coat. I suggest cutting a large amount of product all at once so you can pick and choose the pieces that actually fit the best together. Because hopefully you can find pieces that you don't even have to score or apply clear coat to, and that's exactly what we hope to do in most applications, but obviously that's not always going to be the case because we have so much variance between stone to stone. Now, in all honesty and full disclosure, just cutting all these pieces, nailing them together took a full day to do. And that was actually a good thing for timing purposes because I allowed the glue to dry overnight, and then I came back to it the next day and had a very strong, sturdy hold on every single piece because that construction adhesive had cured overnight. When I approach these pieces the next morning, it's all about smoothing out all of those mitered corners. The most impactful tool that I used for this entire process was actually just a simple utility blade. This material is very easy to cut out large chunks, however, we don't want a perfectly smooth finish. That's where our hand rasps come into play. By applying an abrasive hand rasp, I'm able to actually even out that seam even more, but also provide more nuance or a variance look within that seam that the utility blade just can't provide. Once you have your edge smoothed out to your liking, you can then blast it with your clear coat, which again does an amazing job at blending in all the colors because this material has color built in all the way through. We're just removing that exterior finish, which does have a clear coat already on it, which again is the reason why it's so much lighter than the surrounding stone. Once I do this to all the pieces that actually need it, I can now finally move on to installation. Let's get to the job site. In our situation, we have a thin post that has electrical going all the way up to it into the chandelier above, which is why the first step in this application process is actually going to be making a box to surround not only the post, but the electrical that's built right next to it. And we did have a licensed electrician to take care of the electrical because this is what we first found when we came to the job site, which was not to code, I assure you. As for sheathing, you can use a number of different types of products, but in this application, we are using 3/4 inch OSB. You can for sure use your table saw in this application, but I find it's a lot easier if you're able to use a track saw when working with large 4x8 sheets. And as I noted earlier, each one of these pieces is 8 inches wide, which is a perfect width for the vast majority of our stone that is 8¼ inches wide on the inside dimension. Since we have a light switch to account for, I actually measure up exactly where the center point is for this light switch, lay out my dimensions on the first OSB panel, mark it, drill a hole in one corner, then use my jigsaw to cut out the remainder, and that actually makes it extremely easy, especially with a pre-drilled hole. And just remember, this doesn't have to be perfect because no one's ever going to see it again. Or at least once our beautiful stone is in place. I slip it over the electrical outlet and then use construction adhesive on the sides and place the second piece of OSB right next to it. After that's in place, I can proceed to start nailing it accordingly, but this time we're not using pin nailer, we're using a 16 gauge finish nailer. We're using an 1.5 inch long nail at this application, and I make sure that I'm nailing every 6 inches approximately. Once the first two panels are installed together, I then take the third panel and install it just the same as I did the previous one. This is actually a very fast and easy installation process, but just make sure if 2 of the boards are 8 inches wide, then the other 2 have to subtract the thickness of those 2 boards. For added structural support, I insert a couple 2x4s that not only fill the whole cavity well, but it also makes it much easier to nail my OSB box too. Once that blocking is accounted for, I can then move on to the final back panel, install that properly, and start leveling out this OSB box. And that is actually quite simple because of that blocking. You might need a few extra shims here and there, especially at the very top, because I want to make sure we're pinpoint accurate with the levelness at this location because we need to be mindful of the second layer of OSB that we'll be installing above it, and that also being perfectly level. Once I like the positioning of our sheathing, I then proceed to nailing it off all the way up and down on all 4 sides. One big and final step you need to consider before you start installing your block is to actually paint this sheathing black. Because the evolved stone is groutless and mortarless, that means you're going to be able to see the OSB in small and finite areas, and you don't want a very stark light OSB color coming through in between the cracks. A standard matte black paint is a perfect product in this application. But now that we have this taken care of, after we let it dry, we can move on finally to our stone. I actually do recommend laying out all the product first to make sure that you know exactly where the pieces are that will fit that specific size. And now it's just more of a jigsaw puzzle from working bottom to top. At this point, it's really more of a satisfying moment because you've done so much work to get to this point, and the installation process is extremely easy because we already have all these pieces cut for the majority. As you can see here, I'm just nailing the product directly to the OSB with the same exact nailer. This is a 16 gauge nail that's about 1.5 inches long, and that's exactly what you want in this type of application. The majority of the stone that I fabricated was a U-shape, but as you can see, a few of the pieces are L-shaped, which helps a great deal with seam variation, and that's a really key element when it comes time for installation, because you want a variance with the actual seam locations, because if they all line up at the same exact point, your eye is going to catch it and it's going to look awkward. But anticipating where the next seam is going to be placed and making sure that's a random pattern is going to be much more eye-appealing in my personal opinion, and keep everything looking like it's an actual natural stone formation. At certain points in this application, you are going to have some type of cuts. You could do this with a table saw, but in this application, I suggest using your chop saw, cut it to the appropriate length, then distress the edge, as we did previously to our miters. Just be sure to apply a bit of clear coat to the edge and then install. If you don't want to make any cuts at this point, you really don't have to, but with the application of the seam work, you do really need to make a few different cuts along the way in order to provide that random seam pattern. As for nailing with the smaller pieces like this, I install 2 in the front, 2 in the sides, and then on the larger pieces, I install at least 4 in the front like this and 4 on the sides.
This system is actually extremely gratifying to install just because we did so much work to get these perfectly fit in the right location as well as the right sizes, but now it's basically just a jigsaw slash Tetris system all the way up. Occasionally you do want to double check for levelness to guarantee that all these blocks are actually going horizontally straight, which is key, especially when your eye is actually looking at straight ahead. So there needs to be some slight adjustments one way or the other, go for it.
Also keep in mind that this block is extremely durable, so don't be shy if you need to give a couple love taps to a few different pieces along the way. There is quite a variance in thickness with this product, so keep in mind that you do not want to see any type of inside seam edges as you're working the way up. They should all be completely covered just the way it is shown here. We finally worked our way up to the light switch, and the one thing I kept in mind is which piece was going to be right behind our light switch plate cover. This was the largest flat piece I could find, which is why I felt this was perfect for the piece of stone that was directly located behind our light switch. This, again, is another reason why I loved working with this product, was because it was so easy to drill through as well as use our jigsaw to cut a perfect hole for our electrical unit. I placed our electrical switch right through our hole and then positioned our block correctly. Once positioned, I then nailed it in place and moved on to the next block. And as you can see, the vast majority of these blocks do have some type of miter on them, but that doesn't mean you can't have an occasional standalone block that fits the space near perfectly. With that said, not all blocks, especially the mitered ones, fit exactly perfectly. So if you do have to shave off a small amount on one side with your chop saw, which obviously provides that little extra width needed to fit this piece as snugly as possible. At this point in time, I wanted to say a huge and special thank you to the sponsor of this week's video, Evolved Stone. Now, I really do love this product. It's so innovative and creative, and the moment I saw it, I knew I had to work with it on some project. There are so many benefits with using a product like this. One, it's extremely lightweight compared to other products on the marketplace, plus the installation portion of a project like this is so much faster, especially on large-scale projects that need lath, mortar, and other specialty hardware items. And remember, this product can be installed interiorly and exteriorly with nails. That's impressive, and if you want to check out this amazing product for yourself, then please check out the link in the description box below where I have all the materials and tools that were featured in this video. And with that said, it's perfect timing because I finally made it to the very top of this column, and guess what? We are done. I love how a few small interior elements can truly transform an entire interior of a space. Between the veneered stone post and the walnut beam has completely transformed this entire space, and as you can see from what it looked like before to what it is now is truly one amazing transformation and one project that I'm proud to say is one beautiful, sexy beast. Oh yeah.